Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and it's post-nerfs. It's been a few days. I've got to play around with the balanced druid specialization. I wanted to give you my thoughts and run through what I'm doing now since all of the changes. Overall, boomkin is still really good, still a really strong spec, but I am playing the single target build in my ultimate Moonkin guide pretty much 100% of the time. You can see it here with the Shadow Priest. Our goals are still the same: keep Moonfire and Sunfire and Stellar Flare now on as many targets as we possibly can, while trying to avoid damage. Here at the start, we're playing close to the pillar, staying a little bit back, waiting for the hunter, because the hunter's going to make their first move here. Everybody gets stun locked here. Fortunately, we do stop the lightning lasso, which is going to allow me to move back behind the pillar in frenzied regen. It's really important against marksmanship hunters that you line of sight and respect their cooldowns. So I'm using bark skin on the true shot. I'm getting into bear form. I'm trying to line of sight, stay back with my team. Then I push forward and I go for a solar beam on the healer. This is something that you're going to need to make sure that you do in the future, and I think I do in the next root solar beam, but is to cyclone the hunter pet. But we just blast incarnation with the Shadow Priest silence onto the healer and immediately get aspect of the turtle and life cocoon. So the burst damage is definitely still there. I've been having a lot of fun actually playing with Shadow Priest. I played some rank 3s after the solo shuffle. It seems to be like a really strong composition. We get a cyclone here onto the Mistweaver monk. It's really important to crowd control Mistweaver monks. Killing them and killing their team when they're not crowd controlled is likely not going to happen. So playing a really passive game, looking for no crowd control on them, is almost never going to go good for you. But our crowd control is pretty much over now at this point. We're waiting for solar beam in 20 seconds, so we're playing again close to the pillar with our team, so we can stack up to try and eat the freezing trap or line of sight if we need, because we're not going to really trade too evenly with Ellie Shaman and Hunter burst damage uncrowd controlled. I see the Ellie Shaman pushing up towards the right. We've got a stun onto the Mistweaver, so we're trying to get into Eclipse to burst. I'm going to kill off this healing stream totem. Still really good idea to kill healing stream totems regardless of the specialization of Shaman. This is just going to make sure that you're making the Mistweaver spend mana and not allowing the elemental shaman to do all of the healing. So we're a bit on the back foot. We've got our solar beam coming off cooldown. We'd like to make a push here. And again, it's going to be important that I crowd control the pet. So hopefully I do it. I don't remember exactly in this VOD if I managed to crowd control the pet when we're pushing forward here, but you want to be cycloning the pet if you can. I just go for a solar beam anyways, and then I cyclone on top of it. Would have been better to cyclone the pet and then go for the root solar beam again. You definitely want to be doing that. It could have maybe just ended the game right here. Maybe we still win anyways. Mistweaver's casting a Soothing Mist, so I try and go for a cyclone to interrupt the cast there for a moment, even if it's on DR. Then I'd go for a cyclone on the target they're trying to heal so it can't recover. And as soon as our crowd control is basically done, you can see how I kind of like pull away. I'm just attacking whatever's closest to me and not going back behind the pillar, even if this is the Mistweaver who we were previously crowd controlling. Especially if you're playing with a dot class like a Shadow Priest, is going to be a really good idea. Hunter has True Shot up, so I should be getting into bear from here. I Shadow Meld the aim shot, but respecting this True Shot is definitely important. Our Shadow Priest has Vampiric Embrace up, so it's going to give a little bit of healing, but it's still a lot of damage. Dispersion comes out. We're going to go into bear form, bark scan, frenzied regen, and cyclone the hunter here on that True Shot, trying to deny a lot of that burst damage. This is kind of one of the main problems with marksmanship hunter, is it doesn't have a lot of ways to stop stuff like that. Its burst just shuts down, and one cyclone on the monk here with Incarnation Orbital Strike just absolutely crushes them. Like, they're really squishy. Their burst is really predictable. Really hope that marksmanship hunter gets a little bit more attention in the future, honestly, because I just don't think it's as modernized as a lot of the other ranged classes in the game. Even something like the old school Chimera shot, a little bit more instant damage or something, so it could be a bit more mobile, would be definitely nice for the specialization. But we're gonna have to win with the hunter at some point, so we're gonna have to conceive a strategy here. Next composition is gonna be Ellie Moonkin. Again, in the previous build I would have played Starfall, but I think Starfall is gonna do less damage than single target build now. I played against a boomkin that was playing it, and I did more damage than them, so I don't think the Starfall build is really a thing anymore, unfortunately. If you like that Starburst build and picking up star bombs on the ground, if you're interested in playing competitively, I don't think it's really going to be much of an option. With Nature's Vigil pretty much first global, it's really important to get this on cooldown to get as many of them as possible. We're killing the hunter pet behind the pillar. This is another option to deal with the hunter pet if you want a solar beam, is to kill the pet. So we kill the pet off behind the pillar. We get feared out. This power infusion. This is aim shots coming in from True Shot from the hunter. So we want to crowd control the hunter. We bash the hunter. We cyclone. We kill Siphoning. We're focused on defense, block their attacks. Hunter gets massive spelled. I jump in for a root beam. It's a bit overlapped. I go for a cyclone on the MD here to make sure that the crowd control chain is going to be held down in place. And we're just blasting the hunter. Hunter, again, I'm based on my targeting tier list. If you haven't seen that, I'll have it linked at the end of this video. Hunter is going to be easier to kill than a Shadow Priest or a Disc Priest. So your main target should be Hunter. If they are untargetable for whatever reason, out of line of sight or used Aspect of the Turtle, then you hit the next most likely to die target, which is the Shadow Priest. Also, attacking the pet is a really good idea, especially if a dot classic Shadow Priest or an Ellie Shaman, so I'm always keeping dots on the pet, because if we can kill that off, or if they're running Interlope and we can get some redirected spells to the pet, it's really easy to take it out. But you can see Ellie Boomkin is a really strong comp. Like, we're absolutely just like cutting them down at the pillar. Master Spell is a Stellar Flare and takes a huge hit of damage there. Nice advantage of this build is getting that Stellar Flare. I'm trying to jump behind the pillar and go for a Cyclone on the Disc Priest here to push in for a kill. We get scattered. I end up trinketing this to go for the Cyclone. It gets Phase Shift immuned. We go for a Cyclone again and we get it, but there's a Side Fiend. We want to be killing these or line of sighting them. It's a really high priority. I'm playing close to the Disc Priest because I want to bash out of the Cyclone. We're going to bash out of the Cyclone. We want to jump into Eclipse if we can, but we're getting low. We've got Renewal if we need to. A Cyclone the pet and Root Beam the healer. Looks like my Ellie Shaman might have broke it with some damage though, unfortunately, but that was the right move, which is Cyclone the pet, then Solar Beam. And we've got so much pressure on the team. They're basically just all dying. Keeping dots up on everything has been working really well for us. We Cyclone the Hunter to try and stop him from kicking the aim shot. We get Greater Fade here, Phase Shift from the Shadow Priest. Disc Priest is really struggling to deal with this damage coming out from the Ellie Shaman right now. Ellie Shaman doing a lot of damage, twice everybody's damage in this lobby. Definitely a strong spec out of his most recent patch. We're just trying to keep our pressure up and hitting whoever's closest. Shadow Priest is closest right now, and we managed to knock him over here, pushing him out and away from the pillar. So now those are the two kind of like easy comps. We're going to get the Shadow Priest again here in this round specifically, but winning with the Hunter is going to be the greatest challenge of this lobby overall. I think any cast that gets a win with Marksmanship Hunter is going to be the one that gets the most wins in the lobby. It's just Marksmanship Hunter is not a great patch, unfortunately, for you. And again, hopefully you get more modernized because it definitely feels like it's in the Dark Ages. But with Shadow Priest Moonkin, same type of deal. Try and Cyclone the pet, Root Beam the healer, or you can just interrupt the healer on a cast. That's also good. Cyclone or Line of Sight and use defensive during True Shot from the Hunter. And if you don't have crowd control for the enemy healer, don't stand in the middle of the map and trade with the Hunter. You won't. That is the one place where the Hunter will win, is just standing in one spot and trading with each other. So you want to use your instant casts and move back behind the pillar. So we're waiting for the Hunter here in the opener. We innervate the Mistweaver, waiting for the trap. That's the True Shot aura, almost first global cooldown. Our Shadow Priest stuns the Hunter. Hunter actually trinkets out of that because he's behind the pillar. We're trying to counter blast the Hunter because he's out of line of sight of his healer, but this is super risky to do. I'm honestly surprised I didn't just Barkskin at this point. I jumped to the other side of the pillar thinking the Ellie Shaman is alone on that side. We get wall with Incarnation. We'll swap off the Astral Shift back onto the Hunter, blast out some Star Surges. I see us getting a lot of pressure and I'm pushing forward towards the Priest. I Cyclone the pet. This is going to enable me to Solar Beam the healer, and the Hunter can freedom him here after the end of the Cyclone, but it does stagger it at least a little bit and make it difficult for the Priest to recover. If you're fighting a healer that's playing Gnome, you never want to root Solar Beam. You only want to interrupt casts. So like Penance is a really good spell to interrupt with Solar Beam. Take note of that. This Priest is not a gnome, and I think the Monk is also not a gnome, so it is better to root Solar Beam, but there's a lot more gnomes popping up around here now. As you see, like, we're trading in the middle and we're kind of dying, so trading in the middle against Ellie not going to be too good of an idea as casters. So pull back to the pillar for a moment, keep our dots up. This is a matchup where we could win on mana, so just getting dots on the healer and hitting whatever we can and trying to avoid as much of the Hunter damage is definitely an option for us to win. Standing where I'm standing right now is kind of risky, so I need to pull back. My healer got kicked, he got silenced, so I'm going to off heal with Regross and look for Cyclones in the future if I can get them, but he gets a full freezing trap, so we jump to the Hunter to bash him. We go for a Stellar Flare. Probably it's a lot better to go for bash clone, and if you get kicked then Stellar Flare if your plan is to Stellar Flare, because if you cast Stellar Flare first you can't do anything if you're kicked. So definitely cast Cyclone first so you can Stellar Flare later. Healer's trying to dispel our dots. We got to refresh those as soon as possible. We got to root Solar Beam off cooldown, so we're going for a Cyclone onto the pet. We get kicked, not the end of the world. Just get our dots back up, keep our Moonkin aura going. We get a Cyclone onto the pet, root beam onto the healer. Hunter's pet is way too far away and it's Cyclone. We get our 3 dots up with that Wild Mushroom explosion. We're dumping the rest of our Star Surges and our instant Lunar Strikes, and we got a lot of pressure onto the Hunter at that point. Then we're swapping onto the pet here. We randomly walk into a trap. I don't know why this trap was here, but if we can kill off this Hunter pet, it's going to remove the Roar of Sacrifice. We dump a proc full moon there for massive damage. I'm interested to try a full moon build actually when they buff it in 10.1.5. It's possible that it could be good, but right now I don't think a full moon build is going to be too great. We're just going after the pet, trying to force the Priest to use mana to heal it, or it's going to die and then we don't have to deal with it and they lose their MS. So it's going to be a really big deal. We jump in, we bash the aim shots, we get triple Incarn. Really important to hit Orbital Strike on as many targets as you can because you'll get all of the Astral Power generation from all of the Stellar Flares, and also you threaten like a Mass Dispel, removing multiple Stellar Flares, and that's really risky for the healer. We cycle an Astral Shift onto the Shaman. We knock the Hunter behind the pillar into our team to try and finish him off. We get Lightning Lasso. We're going to trinket out of this because we got Incarnation up and the game is pretty much coming to a conclusion at this point. The Priest has no mana left and we really want to just be pushing pushing forward. We go for a solar beam here, and now we need to try and go for a cyclone. Priest dispels VT. If we can push forward and get a cyclone, we probably just win the game, but I don't know why I'm not shapeshifting. We get stunned anyways, and we are able to kill him. But with that type of matchup, you can play pretty conservatively and still win. When you've got these like kind of dot compositions, is to just stay back, chill, keep dots up, and try and just avoid death, and then win slowly is definitely going to be a recommendation from me when you get these types of lobbies or these types of matchups. But now we've got the Hunter on our team, so we're going to have to really focus on Mass Dispel. This is going to be like a key component for the Shadow Priest. Again, I don't really like Shadow Priest as the main focus target. I think Ellie is better, and if Ellie is behind a pillar, then of course you don't want to just be doing nothing in arena. So if the target that you're main focusing isn't in line of sight, immediately start attacking the next closest thing. Don't just do nothing. I see that as a big mistake a lot of people make. You always want to be doing damage, but just don't attack the non-priority target if it is in your line. So Ellie should be priority here. You want to be stopping Mass Dispel with Bash and Typhoon. So we root Solar Beam, and look, Priest's going to go for Mass Dispel. We get a stun on it. He grips the trap. That would have been sick if we got the stun trap on the MD. So it's really important to just get like a punishing spell. If you know they're going to Mass Dispel the root, then cyclone them instead. The healer that is in this position, we bash the healer or the Shadow Priest because Power Infusion is up. Power Infusion is the scariest point, as well as Void Eruption. Psyfiend is on me right now, and it's honestly a big mistake for me to not be killing the Psyfiend. I'm sitting in the barrier, but I should be killing it. We get Astral Shift with this freezing trap, so a lot of pressure here. Just keeping dots up on the Shadow Priest as well, to make sure that we got cross pressure. I knock him behind the pillar, and I think I try and burst him a little bit because he's out of line of sight of his Mistweaver, and I want to make the Mistweaver panic or come out into the open, but ultimately doesn't come out in the open. Snipe grounding totems when you can, to make it easier for your team to be able to land crowd control. Diminishing return Cyclone here is not honestly great. Going for this, I think it would have been better to wait for the DR to reset. Our Hunter's kind of just randomly soloing the Mistweaver here at this point. Sometimes people will do that, so try and just pay attention to what your team is doing. Innervate the healer here, try and get some off heals. Going for a greater Fade phase shift. So whenever you see a Shadow Priest running in with Fade, they're going to fear. They're trying to immune CC and break snares so that they can get a fear on your team. That's going to be a really big trigger. So if you got any counters to a fear like a Tremor Tome, that's the time to drop it. We get a fear here onto the Mistweaver. I went for my beam before my root came off cooldown. It's definitely a mistake. I'm definitely a bit rusty on Moonkin playing at the start. This is like maybe one of the first times I started playing it since the nerfs. So definitely want to be making sure that your root is off cooldown. Another thing too is this Steel Trap root from a Hunter. If I had noticed that, solar beaming that, it can't be Mass Dispel. It's a physical root. That could actually be a very interesting combo to stop a Shadow Priest from Mass Dispelling. We don't get it here in this game specifically, but just something that I'm noting right now and watching my gameplay back, which is something I recommend that you do as well. It's going to help you point out like the little things that you're doing wrong. It might feel like embarrassing or something, like, you know, you're watching me and here and I'm going like, oh my God, I solar beam with no root and stuff like that. But it's really important to note what you're doing in the game specifically, so that when you move back, you can be like, oh yeah, I need to pay attention to the cooldown of my root on my action bar, so I don't make sure that I make this mistake again in the future. It's really important to do. You just don't want to, you know, bag yourself too much for the mistakes that you're making, because everybody's making a lot of mistakes at this game, unless of course you're running some sort of AI program, which some people do. But even the bots, man, their positioning is off or something like that, which is why you can even beat a bot player in the first place. We kill off the Psyfiend, we root Solar Beam the healer. I'm anticipating Mass Dispel, so I go for a Cyclone. We get in-capped on it. We're going to try and go for a Cyclone again. We get a Bash. They're so low on health at this point, but I want to keep the Monk out of line of sight, so I knock him back. We get a Fear with that knockback. We Cyclone him for 1 second. I can snipe him with Orbital around the corner, and then jump a couple of Star Surges, try and squeak in the kill. At this point, I'm screaming like, how is he not dead? And a Full Moon procs exactly when I needed it, and we were able to finish him off. So kind of a neutral stance till we have crowd control. Then we dogpile, and then when the crowd control is coming to a conclusion and it doesn't feel like the target's going to die anymore, we start to pull back, defensive position, neutral position, crowd control's coming up, make a push in back in, and just trade damage in between and try and disrupt the opponent's push as well. It's going to be your main focus in most of these rounds for solo shuffle. Lower rating, it's a little bit tougher for this. A lot of people just keep, you know, full slam train in and keep running in and playing really aggressive, which if they are doing that, you'll kind of just have to follow suit, because if you try and do, you know, go against the curve, you're going to get stomped. Here we got Ellie Moonkin again. It's a really powerful comp. Like, the likelihood that we lose this is really slim. This comp is really strong. I'd say it's maybe one of the best boomkin comps other than boomkin Demon Hunter available right now. Hunter is out of stealth, so we can start getting some dots up. We know we can avoid crowd control. We already get the Hunter's Trinket, so that's a really big key to victory here. We can kill them in a Bash or a Lightning Lasso later on when they're off to mission return. We also get Roar of Sacrifice, so I'm going to Cyclone the Roar of Sacrifice, deny its defensive abilities, Solar Beam the healer while the Hunter is Cycloned. We get Mass Dispel onto that. We get Scattered and can't punish it with a Cyclone ourselves. True Shot is up for the Hunter, so bashing the Hunter here. I Cyclone the Shadow Priest, bash the Hunter, deny their cooldowns, push forward to the Monk. Monk sees me, moves away from the Cyclone, but I can get a double Orbital Strike here, as well as on the Pet, so trying to get that Orbital Strike to hit as many targets. Blast the Shadow Priest because he's playing aggressive. Even though Shadow Priest not the best target over the Hunter, he was in a better position than the Hunter at that point, and that's the only time that kind of like tier list of targets that you hit is going to change, is usually positioning. If somebody is playing really aggressive on your team, you don't want to let them get away with that. I see that as a pretty common mistake as well in Arena. Now we pull back to behind the pillar, we kill off the Hunter Pet. This is going to eliminate Roar Sacrifice, eliminate the mortal wounds, tons of utility loss for the Hunter. He's also going to likely have to pull back behind the pillar and try and res the Pet if he wants to try and get the Pet back, but I don't even know if he knows that his Pet is dead, so definitely a really good idea to kill off the Hunter Pet. He disengages back. Now he's out of the game. We can jump in towards the Mistweaver, go for a Cyclone. We actually get kicked by the Mistweaver, but we get a Hex anyways. Dump our Star Surges onto the Shadow Priest because again the Hunter's behind the pillar. We always want to be attacking a target and never not just sitting idly. Hunter's now in a great position to attack. We're going to Solar Beam the healer. Didn't Cyclone the Pet. Should have Cyclone the Pet here. We get Mass Dispel anyways instead of Freedom, but Cycloning the Pet before going for that would have been important. We get a bash on the Mistweaver. We're going for a Cyclone. We get Mistweaver's Trinket. We Cyclone after the Trinket. We're getting low here. We got Bark Skin up. We got Frenzied Regen triggered. We got Pain Suppression available, so I should be able to stay in this position. Cycloning Dispersion, really good idea. It's a tremendous amount of healing and damage reduction. It denies a lot of recovery. Now the Mistweaver is going to manually do, and he actually gets caught in a Hex while he's trying to figure out how to heal the target that's getting Cyclone while his Hunter's dying at the same time. And this is the real power of this Ellie Boomkin comp, is once you've kind of like got your footing, the other team just starts melting, and it's really tough for them to recover. Aspect of the Turtle overlapped with Life Cocoon. They're panicking. Shadow Priest gets blasted. Phase Shift comes in, stays alive to a couple of Lava Burst hits. Now we're kind of on the back foot. We got no Bark Skin. They survived our crowd control, so pushing in aggressively right now would be reckless. So I Stampede and I pull back behind the pillar. This is where you got to realize, like, yeah, your gas is gone. You got no more crowd control. They're above 70%. True Shot's up. You just be walking into death at that point in the game. So you definitely want to chill a little bit. I jump in and get a Solar Beam on cast. It was a bit reckless, but then we get Lightning Lasso on the Hunter. This is tons of pressure and just boom, crack, full moon proc. Man, I need to maybe go buy some lottery tickets. These full moon timings are really good for me so far throughout this lobby. We get Life Swap from the Shadow Priest. We bash the Hunter, stop the kick. We get a Cyclone on the healer, and bada bing, bada boom. The Hunter is down, and we are up 5 wins. So really good lobby for us overall. I've been enjoying Boomkin. I had a lot of fun playing Shadow Priest Moonkin last night. It was a super fun composition. It's got a lot of options. I think it's still really powerful. It's just this single target build is likely what I'm going to be playing 100% of the time. I might give it a couple of tweaks to make sure that you're following along, subscribing to the channel, so you know when those tweaks are made. I'll have it linked in the description, but it's also the same build on my Ultimate Moonkin guide, which all those strategies are still applicable. Just don't do the Starfall stuff anymore, basically. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it, and I will catch you in the next one.